Hey, welcome to the Daily Dose. My name is JD. I'm the campus pastor here at North Coast Vista. Glad you're here today. We have just spent 3 chapters in the book of Ephesians looking at what God has done for us, His great love, His forgiveness, His grace, the gospel, the good news. This has been Ephesians 1 through 3. Chapter 4, we turn the page and we start talking about the so what. What do I do differently because of all that's happened in those first 3 chapters? I want to start it with just a parenting perspective. If you've raised kids like I have watched one brother specifically choose to treat another brother a certain way out of fear of punishment for mom and dad. And we think, well, that's a pretty low level of moral reasoning, isn't it? I don't want to get punished, therefore I'm not going to misbehave. And yet on my way to work this morning, my speedometer said 60 and the sign said 45 and I tapped my brakes. Why did I do that? I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to get a ticket. Makes some sense, although from little kid to dad, the moral reasoning can still be the same. Paul is asking us at the beginning of chapter 4 to have a higher level of reasoning, a higher level of following. Let me read this to you. Ephesians 4, 1 through 3. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Be completely humble and gentle and patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. You see, folks, we are called not to obey God because we're simply afraid of punishment. We're called to obey because of everything He's done for us in chapters 1 through 3. A much higher level of moral reasoning is to follow because we are loved, to follow because we are chosen. And when you ask, how do I follow? Well, Paul gives us a great starting point. He says, be completely humble and gentle and patient and bearing with one another. Being humble, another translation will use the word lowly. If you're like me, I'd like to be on top. I'd like to be considered the best at something. Being humble is being willing to consider others better than yourself, to take a lowly position, and that sounds bad in our world, in our culture, and yet it's one of the virtues that the follower of Jesus should esteem most, this humility, to be okay with how God made you because He made you that way on purpose, and not strive to be better than others simply to make yourself feel better. Next, he'll go to not only being humble, but being gentle, and I think of what happens if I was to hand you my brand new baby. You would take it with great care. You would cradle its neck. You would treat it so gently and carefully because it's fragile and because it's so valuable. God is saying, if you want to live a worthy life, treat the things that I value with great care and gentleness. What does God value? You, others, people, what He created. Be gentle with it. And finally, he goes on to say, be patient and bear with one another in love. And it's going to be a natural outcome of living in proximity to others that we're going to hurt each other, that we're going to have problems. He would say, we need to be forgiving. We need to bear with one another. We need to be long-suffering. Mark Twain said it great when he said, forgiveness is the scent that a violet releases on the heel that just crushed it. I love that one. This passage ends up with Paul writing, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Church family, we are very different. I bet in your family, if you have siblings, there are no two alike. And the Bible's not calling us to uniformity, for all of us to be exactly carbon copies of one another. It's saying what unifies us is the Spirit, is God's Spirit. That thing that you received the moment you said yes to Jesus. You got the Spirit. That's what unifies us. That's what makes us brothers and sisters and ought to inform how we treat one another. And he ends it with a great call to peace. So I'm going to do the same this morning. Out of Colossians, the same author, Paul simply writes this. Church family, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body, you were called to peace. Have a great day.